Happy hump day. Happy hump day, everyone. Welcome to this Wednesday night edition of the Angela Ray Show. I hope that you all have had a fantabulous day and you are ready to kind of wind it down for the evening. So grateful to have you on this journey with me. For all of my viewers who will be catching the show on the replay, thank you so much for all of your support. We definitely appreciate it. Shout out to everyone who's catching this podcast, our broadcast tonight, either on Periscope or Twitter. Just this week, we started broadcasting on Periscope and Twitter. So I know that many of you may be new to the family, but we welcome you nonetheless. For all of my live viewers, you know what to do. Let me know when you get on the broadcast. Go ahead and do me a favor and slide into my comments. Let me know what you're planning to do this weekend. If you have plans, whether those plans are working, whether those plans are sleeping in, absolutely nothing. Or maybe you're going to tackle one of those home improvement projects this weekend. I know that is my plan, but that was my plan for the past 2 Saturdays, and I just didn't get around to it. So this Saturday, I am definitely hoping to get around to doing some home improvements. Hey, LaDonna, how are you? I saw the little wave. It was really, really small, but I did get a chance to see it. So appreciate you being on the broadcast. And LaDonna also has her own show that she is broadcasting over on Instagram. You can check that out. Oh, so you are doing you're going to be watching that this weekend. Awesome. Yeah, there's so many virtual events that we can partake in these days, from film festivals to their writing conferences. As a matter of fact, I just inboxed someone because I'm going to be speaking on Saturday at a virtual conference. And I was like, is there a flyer? Because I would love to share it with my audience here at the Angela Ray Show. So you all who are regulars, you know what we do every evening. We get the party started with our Ray of Motivation moment. And for tonight's Ray of Motivation moment, I want to ask a question that was asked by Mr. George C. Frazier, and that is, what gifts are you holding hostage from the community because of your fears? What gifts are you holding hostage from the community because of your fears? Now, I must say that I am the first to admit, to be transparent. To quote Usher, these are my confessions. I have fears often when I'm getting ready to launch something, whether it's something like this show. I remember back in May, I was determined that I was going to launch this show. I'd been talking about it in April. And finally, I said, this is going to be one of your birthday presents to yourself. And so the beginning of my birthday week, I did it. That first episode, it was all right. You know, y'all didn't criticize too bad. So I decided to come back the next day. But thinking about the gifts that you have, whether that is a gift of baking, you know, that you could be sharing on a larger platform than just the people in your family or just the people who live on your street. I know I won't call the name, but there is a lady who lives in my hometown, just outside of my hometown. Oh my goodness. I think she does sell some of her cakes, but like literally I can put a slice of her cake in the freezer and like 3 months later, take it out, thaw it, heat it up. It tastes just like it did the day that she cooked it, probably because she makes all of her cakes from scratch. But there's so many different kinds of gifts. And oftentimes, because things come easy to us, because they are natural, that's one thing that kind of will confirm for you that it is your gifting. But sometimes we discount it because it is just so easy. But you never know who could benefit, who could have a breakthrough from you sharing your gift. Now, I talked about having some transparency and some fears on some things that I felt, but I'll let you know an example of when I got that confirmation that I was on the right path. Last summer, I had a chance to go to a women's shelter along with some of my other colleagues. And we were just there, just kind of to spend some time with them. Nothing big. We took some bags to donate for the ladies, and that was it. And the organizer, one of my brilliant sorority sisters, was like, well, Angela, our speaker who was supposed to speak is not here, so I need you to fill in. So, of course, I didn't have a speech, but I decided to speak a little bit and share some of my poetry. And poetry is something I've done for years. I don't do it nearly as much as I used to, but I shared a poem called Born to Shine, you know, just one of my poems. And literally, there was a lady who came up to me after the event who was in tears and hugging me and saying that was the confirmation I needed. And I was like, from my poem? Like it literally blew my mind that something that I just consider as simple as what I'm just going to say is a little poem really had that impact. So I want you to ask yourself, search your soul, search your spirit. Think about that thing that you do so well, or maybe that thing that no one even knows that you want to do. What are you holding hostage from the community because of your fears? And how can you get up off of those fears and walk in faith to make it happen? And that is tonight's Ray of Motivation moment. Well, I am really excited about my guest on tonight. For over 28 years, Dr. Cindy Milligan was a television and radio journalist. Her experience in broadcasting and media opened the door for her work in a variety of businesses in different industries. She's also a motivational speaker. She has spoken internationally, and she works with spoken word artists, actors, and voice actors to create their voices and use their voices to their maximum potential. So it is my esteemed honor to welcome Dr. Cindy Milligan. Dr. Cindy, thank you so much for being on the Angela Ray Show tonight.
Hi, Angela. Thank you so much for having me. I am so
Well,
excited. I've been thinking about this all day.
Well,
Couldn't wait to
awesome.
talk to you.
I am looking forward to this conversation. So, the first thing I got to ask, sometimes people often say, are we still in a pandemic? Because I look on social media and people are living their best life. But we are, and so many people are still working from home. So what did you do during the bulk of this downtime?
Okay, Angela. I'm going to answer this question, and it's also going to answer the other question you just asked everyone else about what you've been holding hostage.
Okay.
So what I did was I actually launched a series of online classes for voice actors and people who use their voices professionally, creatively and professionally. And I have been doing coaching and teaching for years. And I was going to do it online, but this just pushed me to do it a little bit quicker. And so that's kind of the one thing that I had been holding hostage, right?
Mm-hmm.
I have been coaching individuals, but then just to open it up to everyone, I started a YouTube channel. I started posting more on social media, and it's just kind of opened up a lot of doors for me. And the good thing about this time for me is that it gave me the space mentally and physically to do it, because when you're doing so many other things, it's hard to focus on the one thing. And so the pandemic gave me the opportunity to focus my attention on setting up this business and expanding it in a different way.
Awesome. Now, as I was reading your bio, you worked in not film, but radio and television for more than 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
But I know during that time, the industry changed, especially from a journalism perspective. How did you ride those changes? What were those changes like for you?
Well, interestingly enough, the bulk of the changes came after I left the broadcast journalist industry.
Okay.
But things had started to change. It was the technology. The technology just made things so different. It's made things a lot easier, but it also gave journalists a lot of extra things to do. Mm-hmm. So, it was easier because I was able to catch it. I was in it while it was happening. Okay. And so it wasn't that difficult. But if I tried to jump into it now with the technology, my head would be spinning.
So working as a journalist and thinking over your career, what would you say was your most unforgettable interview?
Okay.
Oh, you laughing. Okay.
I am. Actually, I have 2 unforgettable almost interviews. They didn't actually happen, but they kind of happened. The first one was I was covering the IRA bombings in London. So I was overseas, and just talk about living your best life. I was just having a great, grand time. And when I was on my way back, I had run into a bunch of people who were always hanging out at this pub, and they were drinking this drink called TNT. And TNT is just a cider. It's not even alcohol. But the cool thing about that I thought about TNT was that it was packaged to look like a stick of dynamite. Well, growing up,
Like the
growing
cartoon.
up, yeah, I was always drinking cider with my dad, especially in the fall. So I thought, hey, I'll bring some cider back for him. Well, I tried to get on an international flight with 8 bottles of TNT that looked like a stick of dynamite. And I got
Ooh,
detained. And I was trying
okay.
to interview the guy who was, checking my luggage. And
Hmm.
he thought it was great and funny. And so he just said, oh, well, this is wonderful. Let's just have a wind up. So he called his supervisor and said, hey, look at this. Isn't this cool? Well, the supervisor didn't think it was so funny. And I got snatched up immediately and locked in a room and held up an international flight for 3 hours. So that was the interview that almost happened. And so for the longest time, I was working, when I was working at KOMU in Missouri at the time, and I came back and I had all these crazy stories of what had happened to me while I was over there. But that, hands down, was the craziest because it threw everything. They really thought I was a terrorist and that I was getting on this international flight, and they thought I was going to blow it up. They thought I had a compadre on the plane waiting for me. So
Oh
they
no.
treated me like that. Yeah. So the interview didn't really happen, but I
Hmm.
was able to report on it when I got back to the States.
Okay. Now, have you ever reported on any major historical events? Uh,
Not like what's going on today.
okay.
Not like what's going on today. I worked in New York for a long time, and it was not really, there was not like a lot of really crazy things happening. Um,
Hmm.
and, it was more of when I was working for CBS radio and CBS News in New York, it was really pretty mundane. A lot of the political stuff, there wasn't really things popping off the way they are right now. And then, of course, when I was in California, um, there were some things every now and again that happened, but nothing historic. Nothing I can say, oh my God, I covered that. Probably the biggest thing I did cover was the IRA bombings in London when I was, working for the television station at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you have developed this theory called Sonic Vocality. What exactly is that?
Okay, so over the years, Angela, I've used my voice in a lot of different ways, not only from being a speaker, but in broadcasting, in teaching, in voiceover. I've done a lot of different types of voiceover. And so I was always looking for someone to help me with my voice because in all of those different areas, I use it in a different way, right? As a
Hmm.
reporter out in, snowy, freezing conditions, it's quite different than sitting in a studio interviewing someone, in comfort. And so I was always looking for a way to, improve my voice, but I couldn't find it. Vocal teachers and vocal instructors were always very segmented and fragmented. So when I started working on my PhD, I was so fascinated with the spoken human voice that is what I decided to do. Now, technically, I'm a film scholar, so I studied film and I wanted to know how actors use their voices to create characters. So that was the basis of the research project. And that's where Sonic Vocality came from. Basically, what I did was I found 5 pairs of matched films, like an original and a remake. For
Okay.
example, the Thomas Crown Affair, and then the remake of the Thomas Crown Affair. I had 5 of those films. I found clips in each of the films that the dialogue was the same. And
Hmm.
I edited those and showed them or previewed them to 3 different focus groups. Uh, one focus group, I just let them see it as it was produced with sound and visuals. A second focus group, they only saw the images, they had no audio. And the third group just had audio with no visuals. And I wanted to know which one of the groups actually got the most information about the characters. Guess what I found out?
What?
The people who just heard it with no visuals at all learned 10 times as much as people who watched the film clips as they were produced with sound and visual. So it just goes to show how important the sound of the human voice is, especially in audiences understanding characters. And so that's what sonic vocality is. It explains the phenomena of how actors use their voices to create characters. And out of that research, I think there was like over 385 different traits or characteristics that were defined through like 12 different vocal elements. Things like pitch, volume, speech rate, pauses, emphasis, articulation, pronunciation. And those are the things that I have used now to create the classes that I'm teaching, because you can change how you sound and create new characters by manipulating one of those or multiple, of those elements. So that's sonic vocality.
And so you work with actors, voice actors, you work with spoken word artists. What is a session like with you? How do we do that? How do we do that?
Fun. You want to do what?
Oh, sure. I'll do it.
Yeah, because you were talking about that you wrote poetry, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. And so usually what I do is I find out what are their goals? A lot of people, a lot of actors really just want to refine their skills and refine their craft. But storytellers, comedians, spoken word artists, it's really a different way to use your voice. Okay. So, what I do is I find out their goals and then I just coach them through it. How they're articulating, how they use pace, rhythm, how they use pauses, volume, how they use the pitch of their voice, breath control, all of that works together to communicate a certain message.
Okay. So, like, how do we do this? What do I do? Do I say, no, you're not supposed to do that. I do know that. You're not supposed to clear. Really, it's there. I think I heard a voice coach say one time that when you blow or if you're clearing your throat too hard, it actually, messes up the vocal cords. I heard that one time, and I'm about to sip water and it's not room temperature. I know that's bad too.
Yeah. You don't want it icy cold, but you're right. Okay. You don't want to clear your throat too much. And people do that sometimes just as a crutch. They're constantly clearing their throat or coughing or sneezing really violent. You have heard people just chew. And that's really not good.
That's a whole nother and with no mask on. You talking about right. Running?
Right.
Okay, I'm back now.
You good?
I'm good.
Okay. So yes, you should always be hydrating. Okay. And you've probably heard people say you should drink 8-ounce glasses of water a day. That's only if you weigh 132 pounds.
You're supposed to drink half your body weight, right?
Half your body weight as a minimum. Yeah. But if you are drinking anything that has caffeine or is dehydrating, like alcoholic beverages, or if you're taking any type of medication that is dehydrating, you should add extra water on top of that.
Ooh, Lord.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So one of my very loyal viewers here at the Angela Ray Show, Mr. Edwin Evans, wants to know, you make him sound like James Earl Jones.
Boy, if I could do that, I'd be super rich. Okay. So hello, Edwin. Actually, I can't make you sound like James Earl Jones. There's a couple of things that are working for James Earl Jones. Now, I can't give you the exact dimensions and length, but the thickness and the length of his vocal folds are part of what make him sound so incredible. And that we don't have no control over, right? So unless you're going to surgically go in and try to do something with your vocal folds, which I would not recommend, sounding his body is part of the reason he sounds the way he does. But it's also because the pitch of his voice is so low and so deep. A part of that comes from just having a relaxed body. Some people are just blessed with great vocal folds, point blank and period.
Okay.
So sorry, Edwin, I can't. But I can help you have a more resonant and clearer voice.
Okay.
So one of the things I had to study in my PhD program is the anatomy and physiology of the voice, which when I first found out that I had to do that, I was freaking out because I was like, you know what? I'm a social scientist. That's the reason I'm studying communication. I'm not a science-based scientist, but I had to do it. And it's actually one of the things I'm really, really glad that I had to learn. So I not only understand the creative process with the voice, I understand how the voice works and I can help you with that. But I can't make you sound like James Earl Jones.
He was just wanting to, maybe do the 10 commandments or something.
Right. Which
No,
is like,
not a
which is,
good
which is
James Earl
a
Jones.
magnet for people. People are
Yes.
just like, yeah, if you
Yeah.
have that kind of deep voice,
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons that's true, Angela, is because lower frequencies and lower tones literally hit you physically lower in the body.
Oh.
And higher tones and higher pitches hit you higher in the body. So, it's like,
So is that like it? So that's why, like, if I'm a woman and a guy got a deep voice, I'm like, ooh, is that what happens? Is that what you mean? Oh, wow.
you know what they called Barry White, right?
No.
The walrus of love.
Oh, no, I did not know that. Hey, Cassandra Jolliffe, we see you, girl.
Yeah, hey, Cassandra. So yeah, so
Oh.
it's because those lower tones literally physically hit you lower in the body. And, people are always saying they were, creating children by listening to Barry White.
Well, so what about this one? Edwin's like, okay, maybe not James Earl Jones. Can you do this one for him? Can you do that? Can you hook a brother up on some loofah?
On some Luther, I cannot. I am so sorry to disappoint. But they had vocal folds and their bodies were just made in such a way that, so the body cavity, the chest cavity is a resonator. So you have, your chest cavity, your buccal cavity, which is your mouth, your nasal cavity, all that resonates sound. And so they had these incredible chests that just made their voices like amplified. And so Luther, right? Everybody, there was this big debate about whether Luther sounded better when he was heavier or after he lost a lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
Well, most people couldn't tell the difference. But the truth of the matter, the man's vocal folds and his chest cavity resonated sound like that's only God created that.
Wow.
Yeah.
I remember seeing an interview with Luther where like sometimes on this song, and I cannot sing, so don't y'all try to don't try to joke me because I know I can't sing. But where he would be singing and he would go, ooh, or he said he discovered that when he was doing jingles. He didn't know he could do that, but he was doing a jingle and he discovered it. And instead of using it on that jingle because he was going to be giving that to someone who was just paying him, he's like, I'm gonna save that for myself. And so that's why we started to hear it in his music later.
Right. Well, you know what he was doing with that? And this is really the bottom line of voice anyway. He was just playing with air. Because your whole voice is based and functions on your respiratory system and what you do with air. So that's why you can change the sound of your voice. And when I talk about the Vocal Power 12, those 12 elements that I discovered while I was doing my research is whether you're trying to make something sound lower, change the pitch, whether you're trying to make something sound louder, it's all about what you do with the respiration, because you only speak on the exhale. You can't inhale and talk. So you're speaking on the exhale, and what you do and how you play with that air is how you sound.
Okay. Hey, Antoine Hawkins. No, I will not do another Luther. No, I will not.
Do Luther. That was good.
All right. Cassandra has a question. Cassandra is also an amazing talk show host as well.
I used to work on the motivational speaker circuit with Cassandra. We had so much fun.
So you see her question?
Yes. So she says, how long does it take to hear improvement in a person's voice using the vocal exercises? You know what? It really kind of depends on how you learn to control your breath. Because when I first went to a vocal coach, I found out that I was breathing wrong. Right. And I had a lot of upper chest, shallow breathing. So, if I ask people to take a deep breath and they do one of these things, right, that's not breathing from the right place. And then you've probably heard vocal coaches say you got to breathe from the diaphragm. But that's kind of crazy, too, because nobody knows where the diaphragm is, nor how to breathe from there. So I had to fortunate pleasure of working with a vocal coach that taught me how to do lower body breathing. And because I had been doing it so long, it took me about 6 months to really change the sound of my voice, but the pitch changed dramatically. Because I used to talk up here like this, and there was so much stress and tension in my vocal folds that when I was able to relax and breathe properly, then my pitch settled, and it's totally different. It's totally different. So now, if you can learn to breathe properly more quickly than I did, which I would suggest most people can, because to me it just didn't make sense, that I was breathing wrong. I'm like, I'm alive, but just trying to understand that whole concept and how the voice works. So, you can learn it more quickly, but it really just kind of depends on you, because you might not be doing things like I was doing them. You may not have been doing too much upper chest, shallow breathing, but yeah, it just kind of depends. Now,
Okay.
if I take you through the exercises, you'll sound dramatically different immediately, but you might not be able to maintain that once you walk away, because you go back, the muscle memory causes you to go back to breathing the way you were before. So you just have to relearn that skill.
Okay.
Yeah.
Edwin I think this question may be along those lines that Edwin has.
Okay. Hated your speaking voice. You know what most people do? There are not a lot of people who just love to hear themselves talk, but we know them, right, Angela? There's a lot of people.
I mean, really, when you said that, I was like, hold your tongue, girl, hold your tongue. Okay.
But some people really don't, they don't like to hear themselves. Now, the thing about hearing yourself is you are an audience of one. You are the only person that can hear you the way you hear you. And the reason why is because when you're speaking to me, if we were face to face, the sound would come out of my mouth, but it would go directly to my ear, right? And I can hear and process that. However, when you speak, what you hear is you're hearing your voice through flesh, skin, blood, bones, and you're filtering it through your own body. So you can't hear you speak the way I hear you speak.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of interesting because my mom she put this in perspective for me once, because she said to me, Cindy, you can't see yourself the way other people see you. And this was during a time when I was kind of down, and she was really just trying to encourage me, or I thought that's what she was trying to do. She was, but there was another message in it. And she said, so I responded and I said, I can see myself if I look in the mirror. And she said, no, when you look in the mirror, what you're seeing is a reflection of yourself. So while you can't see yourself the way other people see you, you can't hear yourself the way other people hear you. So if you were listening to a recording of yourself, that's still a recording. That's not you, just you. So because you don't like your speaking voice doesn't mean everybody else doesn't, right? Because most people have nice, clear voices that you can listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question to Edwin is, what is it that you don't like about your voice? Can you be specific? Could you even describe your voice if I ask you, hey, Edwin, what do you sound like? Since I haven't heard you, what would you say?
Ah, okay.
Because most people can't describe their voices. We're just not taught anything about them, And I think we should, because if it's our greatest communication tool. I didn't get into a communication or even a speech class until I was a sophomore in high school. Yeah. By then, I had been using my voice a lot, right? So even kids today should learn more about their voices, because you have so much power in your voice.
And they use it so much less than we did, because they're on social media and they're texting. I mean, there are people who will look at their phone ring and like, oh, no, I'll text you, but I don't feel like talking. So that is very interesting. So while we wait for Edwin to come back with that follow-up, so what could I do with like a poem or a speech or something like that? Well, how could I improve that? Or what can I do to change it?
Okay, so what poem are we gonna work on tonight, Angela?
Okay, so I have this poem that I wrote a long time ago. If I say how long ago, y'all will think I'm like 90. But it's called A Mahogany Dime, and it was like it took me a while to write it, and almost like I was talking about in my Rare Motivation moment, the first, like I was so scared to share this poem, but I remember when I finally did. I literally, we had a family reunion going on. I drove an hour and a half to this open mic to do this poem. And it was like I made a lifelong friend that night. Like it just opened up so much just from that one poem. And so then I was like, oh, okay, I can do it. And then the poem literally it grew. Like I had a poem, then I had a logo, then I had an award ceremony called the Mahogany Dime Awards where I honored African American. Like it literally became a movement. So
Wow,
but I was scared to do the poem. So that is even more evidence, if you will, for people to not hold your gifts hostage, because it can just literally change the trajectory of your life. But yeah, so I mean, I could just do like maybe a stanza of it because I know we're getting close on time.
I love the title, The Mahogany Dime. So my first question before you even do that is, what is the message that you're trying to communicate to us through this poem?
It is a poem that uplifts African American women.
Okay. And so you're just trying to encourage, empower, and uplift women, African American women.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So knowing that in your mind, right? Now, here's another thing, Angela, and this is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but this will help you. So there's a thing I have called Voice Skills IQ. And Voice Skills IQ is your awareness of your own voice and how you use your voice to make sure your message is heard and not misunderstood, right? So there's two parts of it. You want to communicate to African American women. You want to uplift them. You want to encourage them. You want to empower them, right? So you have that in your mind. Now, make sure that you use your voice with that in mind. You're trying to get that message out, but you don't want people to misunderstand you. Now, I haven't heard the poem yet. So that's you putting your voice skills IQ in play.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So now all of a sudden I'm nervous. I've done this poem 2,000 times. Now I'm nervous.
No, but here's the thing, and this is a key with voiceover too. So as you're doing this poem, speak directly to me, to one person, because then everybody else who hears you will think you're speaking to them. But you've got to have that human to human connection to really make sure your voice is being heard.
Okay.
So the Mahogany Dime.
A mahogany dime is a brilliant being. The perfect 10 of African descent. Caramel, honey, dark, brown, the mystic medleys of our tones are like precious jewels on a crown. Intellectual, confident, strong, eloquent. For every woman, she is the true paradigm. The quintessential lady. A mahogany dime. That's the first stanza.
Oh, I love it.
Thank you.
I love it. Okay, so here's the one thing I would say. You did this already, but you were playing with the pace, right? Some things you said more quickly and some things you slowed down on. So that is what that's my first coaching note to you, is that there's some things that you want me to really listen to and pay attention to, right? And then some things you can go through more quickly.
Okay.
So overall, I think you went a little fast, but I understand the situation we're in. So can you do it one more time and be aware of where you play with the pace?
Okay.
And can you throw a pause? Is a pause necessary in there somewhere? Because I think your inflection, your intonation, your emphasis was great.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
All right. A mahogany dime is a brilliant being. The perfect 10 of African descent. Caramel, honey, dark, brown. The mystic medleys of our tones like precious jewels on a crown. Intellectual, confident, strong, eloquent. For every woman, she is the true paradigm. The quintessential lady. A mahogany dime.
I love it. That was so good. All right. So there were a couple of things that you did, like when you were talking about honey, you were describing those things. And then you said dark brown. then your tone went down. That was really great
Okay.
because as your tone was going down, it felt darker,
Okay.
right? And then there were some things that you elongated, like I think you did on quintessential.
Mm-hmm.
Quintessential. You like spread that thing out. That
Okay.
was great, right?
Okay.
And then as you went on, there were certain things you emphasized by your volume and your pace and the rhythm of what you were saying. And see, one of the things I think that a lot of spoken word artists get caught up in is trying to do a certain rhythm and a pace. And that's
Mhm.
fine. And that's a certain style. But I think a lot of times their message is lost because we get caught in the rhythm, we get caught in the pace and the
Okay.
musicality of it. But I didn't get caught. I mean, you drew me in, especially slowing down that very first line.
Okay.
Good job.
Oh, well, thank you. I can take a little bit of direction. Yay. So this is why Edwin says he wants to be a newscaster, quiet storm radio voice. He won't. He want
Okay.
to sound like Thomas the Thrill Hill back in the day on K 97.5.
See, I have a feeling that Edwin probably already has a deep voice. Have you heard Edwin's voice?
I have. He's not very deep. He's
Okay.
not very white. So
Okay.
not
He's
very
he's
white.
not Barry.
No. I mean,
Okay.
but who is? I mean,
Exactly. But see, you can still have that warm, resonant, what I call is a dark, smooth, sexy chocolate read, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can do that just by warming your voice up and relaxing your body because the best voice comes out of a relaxed body.
Okay.
Your pitch will change drastically if you just relax. And the most people have this area here in your throat, it's more tense, upper back, neck is really tense because we're under a lot of stress. But if you can just relax that area alone, it's going to change the pitch of your voice. Bring it down.
So then does that mean, like, let's say, for example, I'm trying to impress someone. So if I, take some very deep breaths from the bottom part of my body before I, walk into dinner or pick up the phone, does that say, my voice will sound different?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because you're playing with air again.
Okay.
Right. And so if you just relax the body, good evening, Angela. How are you? Right.
Hmm.
And sometimes you can just slow down what you're saying because a lot of times when we speak really fast, it takes the pitch up because the tension happens when we try to speed things up.
Huh. Now, see, this would be really, Edwin has a question about masks and
Yeah.
our voices. So this is interesting as I'm thinking about this new generation where they have caller ID, where they know exactly who's calling. They will never understand the fun that some of us had when we would call people and do pranks and try to change our voices and stuff. So,
Yes, it's so
oh,
true.
yeah.
Now, you know what? My brothers, Edwin, I'm going to get to your answer here in just a second. But my brothers, I had an older brother and a younger brother,
Hmm.
and they did not sound alike. But my older brother thought that he could sound like my younger brother, so he was always trying to trick people into making him think that he was not who he was. It never really worked unless
Oh,
you
that's
just
funny.
didn't know them, right?
Hmm.
So there are people who are trying to do that. Now we got people who do impersonations, and
Yes.
the people who do impersonations, Angela, that key, I can't do it. I understand how it works, but that is all connected to how you hear. Because people like Jamie Foxx, who
Yeah,
can
I
do
was
an
just thinking him.
impersonation,
Oh
right,
my
of
God.
men, women, he can impersonate people singing, speaking, it doesn't matter. He has got an incredible ear.
Hmm.
So he hears it and then he can mimic it. So that's a whole nother skill. That's a
Okay.
whole nother skill. But back to Edwin. And Edwin was asking about what you can do because we're wearing masks.
Yeah,
Well,
besides taking it off, I guess.
exactly. And so that again is just breathe from the bottom of your body, keep your upper chest and your shoulders relaxed. And when you breathe from the bottom of your torso, then your lower belly expands. And so you have to take full breaths so that when you speak, you're pushing more air out and the volume is not muffled because of the mask. So
Oh,
it takes a lot more energy to speak
yes,
with
it
these
does.
masks on. It
Hmm.
really does. And that's why I'm just like, the teachers, I could not imagine teaching all day with a mask on. I
See,
just,
I think this is a webinar. What you just said, like it takes more energy,
it
and
does.
but I think that that's a webinar that teachers, instructors, anyone who's doing some type of in-person instruction where they do want to wear a mask, they feel the need to wear a mask. There's some pastors who, they may broadcast from their church, but there are 5 people in there. There's a couple of praise team members, a couple of trustees or whatever. It's, they're all spread out. That's different. But for those people who are speaking in some type of public forum and they do need to wear a mask, I think this is a webinar waiting to happen. You got another question from Leslie Youngblood. Leslie Youngblood is a middle grade author. She has a book out right now called Love Like Sky. And the forthcoming sequel to that book will be out in 2021. So she has a question for you about narrating books.
Yes, audiobook publication is like the hot thing right now. So you can make some serious cash doing audiobook narration. So she says she's got narrating a children's novel. There are more than 10 voices. Okay, so really you need to come take my character voice class. It might not take 5 to 7 hours. When it takes that long, it's because there are so many words. But if you're talking about a novel for 8 to 12-year-olds, I don't think you probably don't have 60 or 75,000 words. And in audiobook narration, that's how we determine how long it takes us to read something. So let's see, I have a project that's on the table right now that is about 25,000 words. And I think it's probably going to take me a couple of hours to do it. Now, that's if I just sit down and go barrel right through it. But, I'm not going to read it perfectly, so it's going to require some editing. But I don't know. Depends on how many words. And that's really how publishers determine how long it takes a narrator to read the book. Is there a reason that you didn't read it yourself?
I think that was her question. She was like, any advice? I think she was saying that she was thinking about it.
Hired
She
someone for the
hired.
first.
Okay, the publisher hired someone.
Okay. She said for the first one.
Right.
Any advice reading to children? Okay, yes. The best advice I can give you is the same thing I told Angela, is in your mind, when you're reading this book, you're going to pick one child that you're going to read this to, and you're going to hold that person mentally in your mind, and you're going to read to that one person. Because people are so nosy, Angela. We always feel like we need to eavesdrop in and listen, right? But if you are actually reading or communicating, talking directly with one person, then everybody else who hears you thinks you're talking to them. They don't know, right? So, and you have to make sure that you're reading to the person, like you need to find an 8 to 12-year-old. And it could be someone that's in your family, might not be, but as much detail about this person that you can hold in your mind. So, for example, if I was reading to a 10-year-old, I would imagine maybe a 10-year-old little girl. I can imagine what she has on. I can imagine her facial expressions, her hair. Am I reading to her at nighttime? Is she in bed? Or am I reading to her after school? Is sunlight coming through the window? Are we sitting in the bedroom? Are we sitting in the living room? The more detailed I can get mentally, that's back to my voice skills IQ, the more detail you will hear in my read. And that is like the bottom line for any voice work that you're going to do. It's the human to human connection, right? We have to be speaking to another human.
And I think she said that book has 83,000 words.
Okay, so that's probably 83. That might be 4 or 5 hours, I would think. 83,000 words.
Yeah.
Yes. And so to prepare for that type of read, you just have to realize you can't sit down and do it all in one whack, because it does take so much energy. I remember the first audiobook that I narrated. I was in California, and at the time, this was before audiobook publication became really popular. And I was doing some work for the San Jose Public Library, and they had a section of the library that they would hire narrators to read books for people who were blind or visually impaired all over the
Mhm.
world. So if you wanted a book read, then you could contact the library. They would hire someone, record it for you, and get it to you. Now, of course, everything is, you publish a book in print, and you might as well just go ahead and do the audio version. But I remember one of the first books that I read was this mystery, and I was not aware of how much energy it was going to take. And especially now, since you have, I think you said 10 different characters in the book. So that's going to take some mental focus. And it's just going to take a lot of energy of you making sure that you're communicating the message that you want to communicate directly to a person. So one, I would say, is don't think you can just sit down and just do so much. You really have to be able to take breaks. And two is to make sure your energy is up. Because say, for example, I sat down and I was reading about an hour tonight. And then tomorrow morning I get up and I want to read again. Well, I have to try and make sure that my voice is not too far different, right? Because it's not going to sound cohesive. Now,
Mhm.
fortunately, we have technology and we have great producers and engineers who can, make that segue. But, if I'm really congested in the morning and I wasn't congested tonight, then I'm going to have to do something to try and, clear that congestion so that I can sound more like I sounded the night before. So you just kind of have to approach it that it's going to take energy, and that you're going to break it up into smaller segments so that you can, read more accurately over the long haul.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes, Toni Morrison, absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of times authors read their books,
Mhm.
and they probably shouldn't.
So,
It's better.
did you I think her question was, did you hear Toni Morrison read her book?
Oh, I haven't heard her specifically read it. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I wasn't saying that about her. I'm just saying that there are some authors who want to read their books
Mhm.
because they, and you would think that because they wrote the content that they could get it across more clearly than someone else. But then sometimes you take that fresh perspective of a professional narrator, and they can just bring some things to life that you didn't really necessarily thought needed to be brought forward,
Okay.
because we kind of have a different perspective, and we do approach reading and narrating other people's work. It's just a great respect that narrators have for the work. We're not going to try and change words because we know you agonized over every single word you wrote, right? It's like your poem,
Absolutely.
Angela. We're not going in there and changing quintessential. Quintessential is
Right.
important.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Well, I hear you, Leslie. I hear you. Well, Dr. Cindy, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to talk with us about the voice and the magnificent things that we can do, the fascinating science and biology behind our voice and all of what our body does to help the voice work better. If you would like to get more information about working with Dr. Cindy, her Instagram is scrolling at the bottom of the page. She actually has a voice institute where she works with individuals. So you can definitely get in touch with her to find out more information. So, yes,
Yes.
Dr. Cindy, thank you for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. I love talking about voice.
Yeah,
And, it's great fun to me. I guess to some people, it may sound, I may be like nerding out on the voice. That's okay. But when I have an opportunity to sit down and talk to someone about voice, I always enjoy it. So thank you so much for having me.
all right. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening.
And you too.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye for now.
Well, that is it for this Hump Day edition of the Angela Ray Show. As always, I would like to remind you of Ray of Motivation number 54. Cleaning a mirror does not change the person who is reflected in it. Until next time, I encourage you all to go out and be the change